Slain Back from Hell has a lot of problems. I felt miserable and remorseful playing this title. It wasn't buyer's remorse, it was remorse for the developer. I feel like they could have produced a really saucy and spectacular title, but they didn't. They just missed the mark over and over and over again. The level design in this game is atrocious. You're basically just running and jumping over traps. And this is actually a selling point of the game. And this is supposed to be fun. Well, it's not. If the core movement of the game was tuned for it, it could be. You know what's cool? Traps that have no tell. A boulder that comes out of nowhere, hits you, and the only way you ever know about that boulder being there is after it's already hit you. And probably killed you. That is not good level design. I know there are people that enjoy that kind of thing. They memorize an entire sequence of traps, and then they have to press some buttons in the correct order, and they call that gameplay. Fuck that. There are a handful of traps, and they get introduced gradually throughout the game. Normally a new trap per stage. Some traps are merely obfuscated. For instance, a murder of crows hanging out around a spike trap. That's cool. They're scavenging. I can give this a pass. You can see the spikes glistening, though to be honest, the first time I saw this I thought it was a rib cage or, a carcass or something. I think my biggest problem with this trap is how it's programmed. There's just a blanket kill zone. If I touch the wrong pixel, I'm dead outright. It would have been nice if I could have at least reacted or maybe jumped backwards. I think the absolute worst trap in this game is a little red flower or bulb or something. It wriggles back and forth, or wiggles back and forth. So far in the game, there is no context for this to be a trap, except a growing distrust of the environment and the developer. Again, I could maybe forgive this if I could at least react to the trap springing. Maybe I could duck or roll or swing my sword. But no, as soon as you hit the trigger line for the trap, you're done. Fortunately, whenever these traps are introduced, it's near a checkpoint. Unfortunately, it just feels like a cheap, aha, gotcha, from the developer. To me, it just really takes me out of the game, because I can just see the developer rubbing one out to his masterstroke of gaming design brilliance. I put this trap here and someone's going to die. It's going to be so great when I put them back 5 seconds. I guess I'm glad the developer was gracious enough to put these traps next to checkpoints the first time you run into them. But I would trade that instantly for traps that had better contextual clues they exist, and at least some leeway in reacting to them, instead of just dying instantly when my foot's rightmost pixel hits the trap's leftmost triggering pixel. Traps aren't inherently bad. I think traps can be done tastefully. They can even be enjoyable. But there is a trap to traps, and that is they can quickly become a crutch for level design. Think about that. How many precision platformers have you seen or played that is just a line of traps to be navigated? Well, anyway, you know what else is great? Arenas. Yes, portions of the game where you are stuck and you have to kill a certain amount of enemies before you can leave, or before a door opens, or whatever. The progress forward is barred by enemies. In moderation, I can give these arena fights a pass. But when the game clubs you over the head with them constantly and in succession, it tells me the only way the developer could figure to pad a stage was to force the player into fighting enemies in a confined space as opposed to interesting or varied level design. What's worse is that combat in this game is not really that fun. I think the biggest problem with combat is that everything has so much goddamn health. Normal rank and file enemies have generous amounts of hit points. I don't feel like a badass slapping these ratmen around. It takes 3 licks from this big ass sword to drop one of these fools. Are you kidding me? I should have slapped this bitch ass rat in 2 with 1 strike and he should have fucking exploded. That would make me feel badass. But what about balance? Someone cries. That's the thing. Sometimes you gotta do what feels good. These ratmen feel like busy work. In fact, almost every enemy feels like a tedious pile of paperwork that I gotta get through just to see some action. I don't want to one-shot everything, I just want a proper scale of resistance. That isn't even to mention the enemies that you are encouraged to parry. These guys have a lot of health, they do a lot of damage, and later on have a flood of low-tier enemies to go with them. If you don't parry, you're fucked. If you try to parry, you're probably fucked. Of course, with practice, parrying becomes a non-issue, but that doesn't change the fact that these guys normally require, I'm gonna guess, 2.5 parry to take down if you don't use your magic on them. And the consequences of a missed parry is normally death. Oh yeah, there's magic, and it's about as deep as you think it is. You can throw some fireballs, or you can turn your night vision on. I suspect the developer knew there was too much health going around. And that's why there's this kind of flimsy paper rock scissor element to the combat. You see, you can change your sword into a flaming sword or a freezing sword axe. The damage difference is pretty negligible. I think it would have been better to just add utility to these different elements, instead of trying to shoehorn resistances into the game and readjusting health. You could have had a frost axe slow enemies down, even freeze them completely, and then you could jump on these frozen enemies, maybe access a hidden area, or whatever. This could be a natural or organic way to make the game easier, and it would be in the player's hands to utilize that if they so chose. The fire sword could have done more base damage, left damage over time, or a dot on the enemy, and slowly damage the player at the expense of increased damage. Or not. Make your own fucking game. The strongest aspect of this game by far is the boss fights. There are at least two bosses that I really enjoyed. The Banshee Queen and the Mother Beholder. There actually isn't a lot to the Mother Beholder. It's kind of a classic fight where you want to reflect projectiles back at the boss. I don't know why, but I find immense satisfaction in being able to do this, especially with a sword. It's just fucking awesome. And given just a little more maneuverability, the fight against her would have been a lot of fun. Of course, the real treat of this game is the Banshee Queen. I think it's worth setting a stage when talking about this boss. Before we have arrived at this point, we've gone through a derelict and forlorn tower, whose only inhabitants are the dead. Skeletons clatter about. Spirits haunt. And then there's this thing. There's also a deluge of blood. I don't want to criticize the stage too much. I just want to quickly lament that the developer was not more frugal in his enemy saturation of this stage, and that it could have been more unsettling to have the interior mostly devoid of blood and enemies. Instead, it could have been rain slicked, save the gallons of blood for the lead up to the Banshee Queen. The stage could have been a real tonal shift in stark contrast in many ways. Well, I guess the point is, flaws aside, the setting is appropriate for what we are about to enter into. I'm not an expert, but it looks like to me she's squirting out some miscarriages. She's a pretty simple fight, but there's a really nice rhythm to it. You have enough time to get into position to do a charged attack, and then the fight is back on. Between screams, you want to focus on these abortions, because otherwise they'll take over the fight, and you won't be able to avoid the Banshee scream, which will one-shot you. I'm not sure if you can block it, or if you just have to outrange it. It seemed pretty finicky to me, so I just decided to stay on top of her. This is one of the only times in this entire game that I had fun, and I don't know, it's just the game sets out to be so metal, and it achieves it so rarely. But in this instance it does, and I wish the whole game was like this. But it isn't. Oh yeah, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there is a House of the Dead 2 reference in this game. Well done. So that is the question. Am I supposed to be this badass heavy metal warrior, or aren't I? And if I'm not, don't have the protagonist talking shit he can barely back up. As a matter of fact, don't have him talk at all. Man, it never ceases to amaze how bad writing is in the game industry. I feel that game developers oftentimes do not fully utilize everything at their disposal when it comes to telling a story within a game. Often, I think they don't even realize all the tools they have. Games are in such a unique position that I think you can be a sorry-ass writer, but still be able to tell an impactful story, but you have to use the strengths of the medium. Let's look at how you don't do that. There are times in this game where the text tells you what is happening on the screen, or what is supposed to be happening. This blows my mind apart. There's a section where you're being stalked by something, or it's following you. I'm not entirely sure, but the game tells you, it says, hey, you hear something behind you. Why, man? You are hurting me. The simple fix for this would have just to have had a muffled sound in the left audio, because the thing following you comes from the left, and as it gets closer, obviously it should become louder, and once it reaches a certain threshold on the screen, the sound would be in both audio channels. It could have been a creepy sound, whatever. It could have been any sound. I can create this effect in Audacity. I know you can do this, man. This was just lazy.
Remember that man controls his own destiny. This is the effect I was talking about. Remember that man controls his own destiny. This is the effect I was talking about.
There's just one more example of this that I'd like to cover because I think it could have been a really great moment. We enter into this desolate chamber. There's some weird machines pumping away. In the background, there is perhaps stained glass. But before we have any time to take that in and process the eeriness of this room, here comes the game dev with "a vast shape looms outside in the darkness." I know why game developers do shit like this. It's because they don't want you to miss their moment. They made something cool and they really want you to see it. The problem is, when you force me to see it, that moment is lost. I feel your insecurities. You have broken my heart. Why have you done this? It's okay if the player misses your moment the first time, or the second time, or they miss it completely. Your goal shouldn't be to have everyone see it. It should be that the people who do see it appreciate it and connect with you in that moment. Alright, one final thing to discuss. We get this great scene of spirits reaching out to the protagonist, Bathorin. They are entreating his aid. He replies, "Be gone." It is then established that this pack of perhaps banshees and Bathorin have some kind of history, that Bathorin has been a champion before, that this whole thing is cyclical. Then it immediately gets fucking ruined. Not that it was hard or anything to begin with, but still. What did the developers give us? Once I saw this fucking asterisk psi asterisk, I knew it was over before it even began. If you don't know, asterisk bracketing something, as far as human history has existed, indicates someone is emoting. Are you kidding me? And I'd like to say this is the only time something is emoted in this game, but it isn't. If you've ever wondered what show don't tell means, it's not this. It's the exact opposite. This hurts my soul. It really does. It's worse than I could have ever imagined. This is a video game. It includes a visual storytelling component. Make use of it. In this case, what is the psi supposed to be conveying? I'm guessing an incredulous hero, right? He's done his dues. He just wants to sleep. Please leave me alone, spirit. So what do? How do we get around emoting a psi in a game? Which, by the way, is ridiculous. Well, if we can't animate something because we're strapped for cash, we're independent, that's understandable. If we can't visually tell it through a sprite and our only recourse is text, what about silence? Let's take a look at the dialogue. I would remove the erg. I know why the developer put this here, because he wanted to convey anger. But he doesn't need to do that. We can convey anger just fine by making Bathorin's replies curt. I would also cut out this shit about children, mostly because it doesn't go anywhere, but also because I find it's awkward. For one, Bathorin tells the spirit he has no children, but it's also the fact that he remembers that he told the spirit he has no children. The spirit or spirits seem surprised that Bathorin still remembers the spirits, which suggests to me there's been a sizable amount of time that has passed between the last they met. So did Bathorin not really sleep? Has he just been laying there for a while the world's gone to shit again? Am I reaching too deep? All that aside, our goal is to be short with the spirits as to convey Bathorin's anger and reluctance. I'd also cut the "why, spirit?" Bathrin's last reply should be about leaving him to his slumber, further suggesting an unwillingness to comply with the spirits. I would cut out the bit about demons and the war cry or whatever that's supposed to be at the end. Restructured like this, there could also be more ambiguity about who Bathurn is serving. By doing this, we change the tone of both parties and allows our audience to expand the universe with their own imagination. I think a major misstep with game devs is that they feel the need to tell you everything to make sure you understand the epic that is going on in front of your eyes. When you do this, you get something like anything Blizzard's done recently. In particular, I'm thinking of Diablo 3's cartoon villain demons, spouting their plans off and antagonizing and taunting you as you're on your way to kill them. Unfortunately, this game suffers from that as well, right down to the villain laughing at you. As soon as we walk out of the crypt, the big bat himself confronts us and immediately gives us a, "Ha ha, foolish mortal, I have not the time for you, despite being here at this moment in time. My minions will determine your fate." And this is where I have to stop. I'm not going to go through this entire game's dialogue because it's a fucking train wreck. I'm sorry, man, it's fucking awful. If your goal was to make my muscles contract in pain, you have succeeded. I mean, you can stop at any point in this game and the dialogue is just awful. It's just, "Who dares defile my sanctuary? Ah, fresh man blood. My seedlings will thrive. My underlings wagered you would survive unmolested. I will not waste my time with you, mortal cur. My hounds are eager to play with your bones. 'Tis true, I may be damned, but yours will be the death." Well, that was all very fair, wasn't it? I bet you need a good bath and a bone to chew on. Ha! Bones! Cease your blathering, you grotesque harridan. I will meet you in Old Town, assuming you are still living, of course. Ha! Bones! What the hell is the deal with the fucking bones? You have slain a mother beholder. Lord Thrall will be profoundly irked. They are his most favored pets. He gives them all names, you know. Stand aside, ice demon, or be shattered in 1,000 shards. Do not attempt to flee from them, or you won't live to regret it. That's code for bullshit. Encounter. Yeah, none shall pass. Even your vast bulk will not stay me from this path. What fresh madness is this you speak of? It's time I sent you from this mortal coil. What a crock of shit.